Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Bruce's 928. You know, when I was 19 years old, I saw the movie Risky Business. The 928 was prominent in that movie. And at that time, I really fell in love with the 928. And later that year, I saw Scarface and Al Pacino owned a 928. They were very expensive cars at the time. My 928, when it was originally purchased, would have been close to $100,000. So it was one of the supercars of the time. And you know, if you were a teenage kid, you'd usually have a poster on your wall, and it would either be of the Lamborghini Countach or of the 928. I used to dream about having one. They were very exclusive at the time. You didn't even see a lot of them on the road. My car is a 1990, and there were about 3,000 made that year, but only about 455 sold in North America. So even when they were kind of in their heyday, you didn't see tons of them. And they stopped making them in 1995. But really after 1990, there were less than 5,000 sold worldwide and less than 800 in North America. It was about 15 years later after that I remember driving past a used car lot with my family, and I saw out of the corner of my eye a 928 on a used car lot, and I had to turn the car around. Actually, we were driving a van at the time, got out, took a look at the car, and you know, it wasn't really in the cards for me to be able to buy a car like that back then. I had young kids and couldn't really see myself indulging in a car that was, you know, essentially a big boy toy. But it was then that I thought perhaps one day I might be able to own a 928. Over the last number of years, I would periodically go online, search the various websites looking for 928s. And one day I was on AutoTrader and I saw this 1990 928 black on black with only 24,000 kilometers. And I thought, you know, this could be a sign. I was intrigued enough to call the owner and ask, you know, does this car really have only 24,000 kilometers on it? And he said, absolutely. He was the second owner. He had bought it from the estate of the first owner, who had been ill for a number of years and was in a hospice. And as a result, the car was stored. Most of the kilometers on the car were put on by the second owner. He sent me detailed pictures. I had spoken to the shop that had done most of the work on the car, and I felt confident enough to make an offer. I live in Vancouver and he was in Montreal, so I had to figure out how to get the car home. Now, he said he was going to Thunder Bay in a few weeks, so he would take the car, and my son and I flew out to Thunder Bay and we met up with him. We had breakfast, we drove the car for a couple hours, and I decided to buy the car and get on the road and drive home. So we headed south, drove home through the United States. We wanted to make it a bit of a father-son adventure and see some of the sights along the way. Now, I have to say, I was a bit nervous about buying the car. There were a few things wrong with it that the seller had told me about, and I knew I was going to have to deal with them when I got home. First of all, the car had a big scratch down the entire side, one side of the car, but it also had a warning light on the dash saying that the timing belt needed service. The fan was stuck on high, so it was blowing hard all the time. So there was all these things that made me very anxious about it. We get to Rapid City, South Dakota, and I could hear this noise that sounded like power steering. So I pulled into a gas station. Sure enough, there was power steering leaking from the car. So we topped up the fluid, got back on the road, continued our trip, stopping at some of the sites along the way. We were driving through Wyoming, and all of a sudden, all of the instruments on the instrument panel went dead. All the gauges died. There was nothing. And I thought, oh my God, what are we gonna do now? And I started to get really nervous. I bought this car, it needed work, the timing belt warning light was on. I've just lost all the power to my instrument cluster, and I thought, what have I gotten myself into? What am I gonna do?